Yes.
Okay, I can go across the street and to a state store and buy a bottle of whiskey. And I can drink some of it, and I can get on the highway and meet a state employee who will pull me over and test my breath, and et cetera, okay? I can also buy a box of cigarettes that has a warning on it, if I so choose. Now, how far are you in your industry from getting this kind of cooperation from the government?
Okay. The question boils down to how close are we to becoming actually legalized and making CES available to anybody who wants it. Right now, anybody who wants a CES unit can get it. They can get it as long as they have a prescription. They can purchase it directly from us or from any of our representatives or dealers. The FDA can scream and jump up and down and get angry and annoyed and send us all kinds of nasty letters and threats in terms of seizure and closure. And I will just merely respond to letters such as I did last week, essentially just laying it out. This is the law. You are not operating within the law. You are obligated to operate within the law. Sorry. I've spoken to Dan Kirsch from AlphaStim. They had sent him a letter basically saying that he was given a 510K, meaning he was substantially equivalent to what existed prior to '76. But they said to him, you do not have the right to market because this is misbranded. And he basically wrote back to them and said, I'm sorry, I disagree with you. Your reading of the law is inadequate. You're basically out to harass and shut down the entire industry. We're going to ignore what you're saying. We're going to give you 10 days to respond. And if we don't hear from you in 10 days, we're going to commence marketing. He hasn't heard from them. It's been 4 months. Essentially, they're calling our bluff on this. Essentially, what they're trying to do is to destroy an entire industry without having to go the legal route on this. If they can harass and intimidate and put the CES manufacturers, who are a relatively small bunch with very modest and meager resources available, out of business, then they don't have to go for the PMA call-up and go to Congress for the monies, et cetera. The problem is they do not really have jurisdiction over CES. Where the future lies, at this point, it's difficult to say. A lot of it has to do with the Clinton administration. It has to do with their attitudes about health care. Whether it's clear they have a much more liberal attitude than the Bush administration did. It's clear also the pharmaceutical stocks took a dive after the Clinton victory, given the fact that he was very upset over the fact that between 1980 and 1990, I believe the cost of pharmaceuticals went up 158%. The rate of inflation only being about 52% during that time. And my sense, though, is that the Clinton administration, though, is probably still thinking conventionally about health care as well. And it has to do with just our whole attitude about mind and body and about emotional and physical well-being. And what is involved here with CES is a real paradigm shift in how we think about health, about how we think about well-being, how we think about our body, and also about ourselves as autonomous beings, assuming primary responsibility for our own health. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been following Rick Doblin's successful attempt to get the FDA to approve of psychedelic research. And what he was doing was not going to the FDA so much as going to understanding what particular individual within the FDA had jurisdiction, and then working directly with them as individual human beings, and writing to them and talking to them. Have you tried this approach to the FDA?
Yeah. Well, there really aren't too many human beings in the FDA, which makes no. Sorry. I didn't mean that. Let's go back. Take it back. No. It's really almost Kafkaesque dealing with the FDA. Once in a while, you will actually run into a real human being. For the most part, it's really just a paper trail, just correspondence back and forth. And in 90-day intervals, just intervene. You just sort of send this stuff out into the black hole out there in hopes that you're going to get a response. And generally, you don't. Something happens, all of a sudden there's a phone call, there's another letter, you send out another letter, I send letters to my congressmen and senators, et cetera. Strategically, okay, what we need to do is a couple of things. One is first of all, they can't do anything unless they do a PMA call-up. And the question is, will they go to Congress, and will Congress give them the money for that call-up? If that call-up occurs, we feel confident that we have the evidence available now in terms of the research data, and especially with this Harvard meta-analysis, to justify the quote-unquote legalization of CES out there, or moving it from the grandfathered status into this classification 2.
Larry?
Yeah.
Please ask everybody to write Clinton right now.
head of Health and Human Services. If he does those things, it's going to be very difficult. So it's important that they get a flood of letters.
Yeah.
This is a critical moment.
Again, you know, I second that, third it. I hope you all heard that. Waxman, who's, what Terry was talking about was the concern about the possible renomination of Kessler as head of the FDA with his draconian approaches. And again, and also with Waxman from California heading up, you know, the major agencies in Congress dealing with healthcare issues. Waxman, who's liberal on virtually every other issue, but when it comes to healthcare is just draconian in his approach. Ditto with Kessler. And if any of you feel that strongly about it in terms of non-conventional approaches to healthcare, letters are certainly in order. And what we're dealing with here, again, all of a sudden, you know, the major interest in vitamins and nutritional supplements, et cetera, essentially with hopes that the pharmaceutical interest in this country can take those over and they'll be available by prescription, as opposed to you gaining access and utilizing them on call by your own determinations and not that of a doctor. The question is, who's going to control destiny over your body, over your mind in this country? Yeah.
When I was saying that you can sell your little box, what does your box run by?
I'm sorry?
How much does your box run?
Okay, the unit sells for $795. Okay, it's the retail price. We tend, however, to make it available at a lesser price, depending on whom we're talking to.
And have you got a doctor that you work through?
We have several doctors actually here in the area that we work with. We have established fairly close relationships with at least a dozen MDs here in the Northwest. We also have a number of doctors nationwide that work with us, and a number of therapeutic and psychiatric facilities, too, that believe in the unit, believe in the modality.
These, the people who are selling these units and marketing to the New Age magazine things, has the FDA tried to track them?
No,
How come?
because they've got so many things to deal with right now, they just can't be bothered going after them. The underground people out there have not allowed them, I mean, they just do their thing. And FDA, as such, in terms of determining its own priorities, has decided they will go after the people who, in a sense, are under their purview. Well, we voluntarily came into their purview because we don't want to do it behind anybody's back. We want it out in the open. We want this legitimized. This is a legitimate mode of treatment, and it's safe and efficacious. Yeah.
Not had any experience in seizure from FDA?
I don't think they're ever going to seize our stuff, quite honest with you. We have tried to adopt a fairly reserved tone in terms of how we've dealt with them. I've tried to essentially, my basic posture is to sort of submerge my own ego needs as best I can, not get off on this, and also, I keep seeing little signs here about please repeat question. Okay, and I guess it has to do with the whole issue of seizure.
Well, I just asked if you had any experience with seizure. It seems like the guys who are most successful with dealing with the FDA, ignoring the threats and intimidations.
Yeah. Well, we are concerned about seizure. I don't think they're going to do it. I think that as long as we can keep the correspondence going, and we've also sent letters to all our congressmen and representatives as well. We've also, and also we've had our own lawyer work on this, sending stuff out under his letterhead. I don't think it's going to happen. It's just a matter of keeping it going, keeping the conversation going, generating enough paper. These people live on paper, and so we just give them more paper and more paper and more paper, and that seems to make them happy. Yeah, yeah. I mean, ultimately, you know, it seems as things should really come to a head and go one way or the other. It's my sense, though, this could go on forever. I don't know whether we'll ever get our chance to actually appear before a neurological review board panel. What's interesting was that in 1978, there actually was a panel of neurologists and behavioral scientists that was convened to evaluate CES. And at that time, they made the determination that CES, based on even the scanty evidence that was available then, was effective in terms of treatment of anxiety, primarily in treatment of alcoholism and substance abuse. There was then a major argument amongst the members of that panel, because there was one group on the panel itself that wanted it employed not only in that area, but also across the board. Say, if you can treat anxiety for alcoholics and substance abusers, then garden level anxiety and anxiety across the board could be treated as well. They got into a real battle royale at that point, and at that point, the FDA commissioner stepped in and said, forget it, and he took it all and just dumped it all in the classification 3 grandfathered, lowest priority in terms of PMA call-up. That was back in '78. But it came real close then We know we've got the evidence now, the data to present, but we haven't got the money to go ahead and do our own clinical studies and submit for our own pre-market approval, our own PMA. It would just take too much money. We haven't got those resources. What it costs to bring a single drug to market averages about $23 million.
What would happen if you took theoretically a unit for frame of reference, even like the Voyager. Let's say you use it in an eye-open mode and drove it to 100 cycles per second. How would that relate to what you are using going in this manner?
The question had to do with the utilization of the Voyager or any light and sound or a variety of other modalities that in some ways replicate what we're trying to do electrically. I don't know. I don't know. My sense, again, is that we're talking also about a variety of modalities that could be used in conjunction with each other in very interesting ways. One of the areas that we've also been exploring is utilization and deployment of amino acid supplements with CES. We know this works. We've been working with Ken Blum, who's director of psychopharmacology at the University of Texas, and who's director of neurogenesis. And his amino acid supplementation, utilized with CES, we feel is extremely potent combination. If you look at the brain, you think of the brain, a couple of cells of which might not be functioning properly, like a car battery, you need both water and the trickle charge. The amino acids, the CES, we feel are a very, very powerful combo. We also know that it probably would work in tandem with the light and sound in the right kinds of ways. Our problem right now, having played with the sound, we developed a tape, for example, that was made specifically for our CES unit by our psychoacoustics engineer, utilizing the 100 hertz electrical stim and working off a variety of subharmonics of that audially. When we start to talk to people about it, it was simply too much. People couldn't deal with all of that, especially in the medical therapeutic marketplace. We come in with a tape as well as electrical stimulation, too much. It was just not all digestible. And so we finally pulled back, and we tried, again, to go as simple as possible in regards to the unit, simple as possible in regards to the claims, and simple as possible in regards to the dynamic that's operating here. And I think there's enormous potential here. Tie-ins of CES with forms of biofeedback, with EEG and with EMG, et cetera. I mean, with the light and sound and combos of that. We just can't do it right now. There's just simply too many battles to be fought. My time must be up. Time flies when one's having whatever. At any rate, thank you very much. And I know I haven't had a chance to really talk very much about CES. Perhaps we'll have a chance to talk a bit later on it. Thank you.